This is an alarm clock. BP is an alarm clock that is ringing so loud on the table next to our bed. We've got to take advantage of the message that we are getting to come up with a better energy future. And I'm heartened by the fact that even though a climate bill is tough, there were a number of key Republicans who voted for the climate bill in the House in June, and had they not voted for it, we wouldn't have gotten enough votes to pass the climate bill. So that tells me, for as hard as it's going to be, that there are areas of common ground, the incentivizing of green technologies in the United States, finding strategies, public transit strategies that reduce sprawl and reduce the 30% of greenhouse gases that are from automobiles. And even finding a right mechanism on carbon pricing that will incentivize the development of other technologies. We ought to be able to find common ground on these. Let me mention one other that you didn't ask about that I think is a common ground: immigration reform. Many administrations have kicked immigration reform to the, down to the next row. I give President Bush credit. He tried immigration reform, but couldn't find a path through in Congress to make it happen. And so it's been deferred for a long period of time. But immigration reform is an issue where Democrats and Republicans all kind of want some things. We want border security. We acknowledge the fact that we're not going to deport 12 million Americans. So there has to be a strategy for letting folks acknowledge that they violated the law and then paying fines or something and then getting in line to regularize their immigration status. Employers often rely on workers from other countries, and they don't want to be penalized for doing that. There's a lot of different interests around the table in immigration reform, wanting to have a talent society. We ought to be able to find common ground to solve immigration reform, and I would expect that Republicans would be part of that debate. So I gave a strong speech about what the Dems have done, and I called on the Republicans to join. I'm not pessimistic that they might. The president's going to continue to reach out. These problems are big, and I think the American public, if they demand that their elected leaders be about solving problems, I think you're going to start to see key Republicans come over and actually be part of solutions to some of these issues. Please.
Yes, sir. I feel I have to make a couple comments concerning a couple of your remarks. Shoot, number one, on the teachers in this country, I don't think it's been ever proven that they are the fault for the education system. We have destroyed the inner cities within this country, clear across this country, and this contributes to their not being able to educate our children within the inner city. So I don't think it's the teachers. The second part of it is on Social Security. Right now, we're still living through Reagan's increase in the age to age 67, and that will hit in 2029. There is no reason in the world for any Democrat to agree to increase the age or cut benefits in Social Security. This is not the problem. All they have to do is take off that cap, and it's good forever. It's good forever. So for any Democrat to vote for an increase, if this is brought back by a commission, I think is dead wrong. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to just say one thing. It was a comment, not a question, but I want to say one thing on the teachers' point. It hasn't been shown that teachers are the problem, and nobody is insisting upon that. But let me just give you an example from when I was governor. Virginia is a state with a pretty solid public education system, but we had no requirement in Virginia law that classroom teachers get teacher evaluations. Now, here are teachers who are evaluating their kids daily by the minute, giving 4 grade cards a year, and yet most of our classroom teachers were not getting any meaningful evaluation of their classroom performance. So I put in a mechanism in place in state law to require that every classroom teacher receive on a regular basis a meaningful evaluation of their classroom performance. Now that was an accountability move, and not every teacher liked it, although interestingly enough, most of Virginia teachers got on board, and the only people who really didn't like it were principals who were going to have to do the evaluations. But you can do things that promote accountability and promote improvement that are simple things that I think can make everybody be better. To say we want everybody to always be better is not to say you're bad. It's just to say that we're running against a much tougher set of opponents and competitors right now, and if we're going to keep up with them and beat them, we have to always be focused on ways to get better. It's not about demonizing folks, but we got to get better. Please.
Chairman Kaine, increasingly there's a position within the Democratic Party that the party's long-term close relationship with the teachers union has been and continues to be a barrier to just the kind of education reform that you just made reference to, and I'll mention another, which is the state law, including in Ohio, that teachers be laid off solely on the basis of how many years they've had the job, with quality factoring in not at all. So my question is, to what extent does that relationship between the very powerful teachers' unions and Democratic Party continue to interfere with the Democratic Party providing important and necessary leadership if we're going to remain globally competitive?
Here would be my points of view, one a Virginia-centric and then one a national. Again, at the Virginia level, when I pushed mandatory classroom evaluations, I was very close to teachers. Teachers liked me in Virginia because, frankly, the tradition in Virginia is governors don't send their kids to public schools. You know, that's kind of in the tradition. To have all my kids in an urban inner-city school system was a little unusual, and I got along real well with the teachers largely because of that and because I championed the work that they did. But when I proposed the teacher evaluations, I was at least a little concerned that they might not like it, and as it turned out, many teachers really liked it. And the association did take a position pro or con, thank goodness, but many teachers said to me, I've taught for 15 or 20 years, and the only evaluation I ever get is if some student complains, and then that goes in my file. I never get the benefit of somebody evaluating me and putting to record all the great things I've done with my kids over the years. I'd rather have that in my record. So I didn't find our education association in Virginia an obstacle at all to focusing on accountability and improvement. And at the national level, it is the case that the President and Secretary Duncan, in some of the initiatives like Race to the Top and some of the others, that focus on measuring, you know, can we come up with a smart way to measure teacher performance, that there have been those who have been opposed to that. And clearly, there are reasons, devil's in the details. I certainly think measuring teacher performance is a wonderful thing to do, but you got to do it right. If you don't have the right instrument, if you don't do it the right way, then you can unfairly, you know, you don't want to, for example, ever do something that would make teachers say, boy, I don't want to work in an inner city school with kids who have special needs. I'd rather go to a really good school where the kids are already doing well. You want to encourage teachers to go to tougher schools. So you have to set up a mechanism that recognizes the context. But at the national level, while there's been some, you know, I would say robust debate and even disagreement about some of what the President and Secretary Duncan are doing, I don't see it as just rock-solid opposition. I see it as, okay, well, we see where you want to go. We have some concerns. Can we figure out a way to, you know, to work it out? But teachers are they're part of the solution. They're part of what we need to do to improve it. The gentleman who said it earlier, it's not just about teachers. If you wanted to do one thing, you know, to improve educational outcome, you'd wave a magic wand over homes and neighborhoods before you'd wave the magic wand over schools. But the point is, we know the kids are in schools, and if we can make those schools better and better and better, then by gosh, we ought to be doing it.
Chairman, in years past, our region has been a great steel mill industry.
Yep.
With many jobs. We know those things have changed. They may not go back as they were. But there are new industries coming along, the wind technologies. And my hope is that our region can tap into these industries, retrain our workforce to operate in these new industries. Can you tell us what the Obama administration is doing or can do to help our region to regain those past glories?
Absolutely. Well, here would be my thought. You're right that some jobs have gone away and they won't come back as they were. And yet there's always going to be a need for manufacturing. And in a community like this that has had a strong manufacturing work ethic, there's always going to be workers who will be really good in manufacturing jobs. There just needs to be ways to transition them to the manufacturing of today and tomorrow rather than the way it used to be done. Again, I use Virginia as an example because I'm really familiar with it. We got a part of Virginia that was textile mills, right? So the textile mills left New England and they all moved mostly to the south, southern Virginia, down in North Carolina, Georgia. And these communities did great, and you could get out of high school, no additional education beyond high school. You could work at one place for your whole life and do very, very well.